Okay, so we are back and we'll be talking about uh so we left around what if you could use commands. So we stopped at engine the web worker app. So web workers we found out that web workers let you run CPU intensive computations in the background. But we go to examples. Let's see examples of the web workers. So what kind of background processing might Angular need? Web worker. So he says what he says to get a much. We had new requirements I had to do it. In the HTTP access papers we notably had to clear the data as many entries can have been stored. Such processes can take a while and it's important to not block the UI and the user interaction. That's good. The earlier DB or with the local storage clearing, everything can be done using web worker, how to add a record. ng generate web worker. The command will take care of adding new types, script compile configuration for a worker, which will generate a sample and its uses within the app. Okay, so worker.ts file is being created. It contains TypeScript reference and register a listener, which can be called to start its work in the worker thread. I have actually worked with workers or like background workers in early stage of my career. Yes, that was no, I don't remember, but they were mostly the CPU workers. Like it's the add listener, message, data, constant message response, worker response to data, post messages. So what it is doing is adding a event listener to message and is passing a callback function with the data where response is equal to web worker response to data post message. And there might be a post message function with a response. So what it's doing is type of worker not equal to undefined, create a new constant worker. It's an app component, this is already used in app component. What is there? New worker, and he has given a file. Okay, with the type module, worker on message, data, page load on message if the worker sends a message. Then on message, okay, the worker on message is being reassigned with a function called which takes the data and it consults outside output like page got the message or something like that. Post message, hello, okay. Else web workers are not supported in this environment. We should add fallback so that program will still execute correctly. Okay. Good chance you might want to refactor it a personalize the group of my approved workers in subfolders. Okay, X, Y, Z. Finally, in order to run a test, I call my service. The main message is what he has done is just shifted the everything logic of defining a web worker into a arrow sequence. Then okay, so the blocked user interface. Where the user will be you can call the full test in your browser. You will repeatedly notice that long the Apple longer is not resolved. The GUI will not be rendered again, therefore will not be updated. Okay, therefore work from this work paper edition registration from thread. So here it's taken some custom example. I don't want to go into that example and differ from the logic, but again, I'm not able to understand what he is trying to do here. I'm not sure why he is. Okay, so he is counting the apple using the webworker. So the counter is being count value or the counter is being done. Counting thing is being done in background. Is that so? Okay. That was a really boring example, but yeah, a simple one. Okay, let's move on to the next question. We'll see like life cycle hooks available in Angular. This is the most commonly asked question in most of the interview, and most of the time I forgot how many life cycle hooks there are used. So I try not to look at the screen and try to remember what are the life cycle hooks there are. So I definitely know there are 8 life cycle hooks. The first one is ng-on changes, then ng-on init, then there is engine contained, check content init, after view init, ng view init. There's also ng destroy, there's also ng do check. I don't remember the order, but yeah, I will briefly remember the functionality of ng-on changes, ng-on init, and ng-on destroy. Other than that, I hardly remember the different other lifecycle hooks functionality. So yeah, let's go and look at it. Okay. So what did I miss? Angular creates and renders components along with the children. Yeah, we know that. Checks with the data bounded property changes and destroys them before removing them from the DOM. Angular offers lifecycle hooks that provides visibility into these key life moments and are ready to act when they occur. Okay. So the first hook is ng-on changes. When the value of data bound property changes, then this method is called, yeah, maybe the input property has been changed for a component and ng-on changes repeated, and this is the first lifecycle hook, ng-on init. This is called whenever the initialization of the directive component after the Angular first displays the data bound property happens. Okay. ng do check. This is for the detection and to act on changes that Angular cannot or won't detect on its own. Why is it so that there are some certain changes that ng do check can't identify on its own? Let's try to find it out. चलिए शुरू करते हैं. ng do check. To check example. So and we do check again that hook that invokes a custom change detection functionality for a directive in addition to the change performed by default change detector. Okay. Default change detection algorithm looks for a difference by comparing bound property values by reference across change detection runs. We can use this hook to check for and respond to changes by some other means. When the default change detector detects changes, it invokes ng-on changes. Yes, I know that. If supplied, regardless of whether you perform additional change detection, typically you should not use both do check and on changes. Okay. Point taken. To respond to the changes on the same input. Okay. The callback method that performs change detection invoked after the default change detector runs. Basically, so danger to change in general doesn't do anything, but you might want to invoke it manually if you want to detect changes or check some changes which are Angular by itself can't identify. So what can be the changes? C key value differs and iteratable differs for implementing custom change detection, custom change checking for collections. Okay, so this is something which is being implemented on collections and the interface. Yeah, that I know, but I want an example. So Here the example is component has a selector called parent, it has a template, a link, app child, as the children component, the update user is a functionality that is being called upon clicking of this link, an update link. Okay, on update link, the user name is being changed to Ted. Okay, okay, and user is being passed as a. Okay, so the parent somehow changes the variables of the input property of a child component, and then somewhat the reference is not being changed for the user, but the key properties are being changed. So here ng changes doesn't is not invoked, but ng check is being invoked. When a change detection is done, it's called immediately after ng changes and ng on in it. Okay. Component templates on push change detection strategy. This means a user won't update unless the reference of input user changes. So yeah, this is okay. I got this. The user is this user variable is being stored in some memory location, and a child component has a change detection strategy being set to on push. So unless until the reference of a user is being changed, the change detection won't run. But here in our parent, we have changed the value of a user value, a key value of a key parameter of a user object to TED, and this is something which a child won't be able to detect because its change detection strategy is purely based on push, and unless until the user variable user object reference has been changed, it won't run the change detection cycle. So in this case, setting the username to parent won't change reference to the user. This means on changes won't fire from the child component, but do check will. Okay. So I'm assuming this is something which will not fire, but this will fire. Why? Why is the reason that it will fire? Okay, notice how the child component is on push changes and this username won't update unless the reference. Okay, when should you use to check? By use ng to check when you want to update, want to capture changes from Angular otherwise. For example, if binding reference remains unchanged after a click event, ng on changes won't run, but ng to check will. Let's try this example, okay? We'll go for like start let's okay, and Angular, and now what we just so I'm assuming this is the format a document, and here we'll just generate a component, a child component. Okay, and we'll change the child's change detection strategy to on push. Okay, let's just change it to on push, and we'll import this couple of inputs that are needed for this operation. And what we are trying to achieve here is, yes, this is it. So it's saying that ng on change won't be called, but ng do check will be called in case the key attribute changes. Okay, let's try 712 child is something which is there, and this I need to do this and that component. Mm-hmm. Is there an error here? So I save this and try to save this also. This app model have added ng. It just has created this child component added to app module. Okay, we're not trying to bootstrap it. So sorry. Okay, child component. Please import the child component and here we have implement current file model child component is corresponding type declaration. Why is it so? Is it saying that child component is being found and then up? I have this. Okay, so it's saying there are a couple of things. Input is also one. This is what I hate about it. You have to import a lot of things. My model is something which is very tricky right now. I want to run a simple instance here. I don't want anything hardcode right now. All I want is a child component, hello component. Why is it so that it's not able to find its own thing? Is it so? Okay, so it's not able to find the okay, okay. Uh, saying the template here cannot find any child component HTML, but we do have a child component HTML. We'll see this. Is it how we do? I'm actually not sure what's the issue. Don't have child component CSS. I have child component. I don't want CSS. Let's try to remove this. Okay, so well, yeah, at a deadlock, we want to try something and we're getting something else. Let's say name, we remove it, does not exist. Name does not exist, non-cap component. There is no property of name, come on. Is it asking for something? Shit, man, this Angular compiler is shit. It's purely shit. Mac component does not there is nothing as such of name. It's still crying. Man, this is hard. This is hard. I better go for my local shit. Come on. I guess I'm quite disappointed over this compiler right now. I reboot. Okay, so I'll just have to assume right now what might be the issue here. I'm just assuming do check is being called despite the reference of the user input variable is being changed. Let's go on to the next lifecycle hook and we have the content in it. This is called response after Angular project external content into the components view. Content in the components. I don't get it. Let's try. That is called a triangle has fully initialized all content of a directive. Okay. Define ng after content initialization method to handle any additional initialization task. So k comment immediately after Angular has completed initialization of the directive's content. It is invoked only once the directive is initialized. So I am assuming all the content in a particular component is being initialized, the do check is being done, everything is done, and then after that we might need to like change the content of like or maybe make some changes. This is the content is final one or the variables are the final one. Maybe it might need to change or make some changes to the variable. That is where we use ng after content in it. Ng after content check. This is called in response and which is the content projected into the component. Okay. Okay, let's check this. Lifecycle that is called after default change detector has completed checking all of the content of a directory. I'm not getting why it's being actually called. So what is the difference between after content check and content limit? Examples, let's try to find example. Oh, they have an examples of everything. Okay, let's do like after content. Let's try first like after content. I'm assuming it's the same example like clicking home component CSS, and they have just mentioned the lifecycle hooks that are runs after the first ng2 check. In above example, ng content runs after the ng on and ng2 check. Notice after ng after content is called ng1. Triggering click me function will not run ng after content related. When you should call comes after our content has been initialized. Yeah, it's just like repeated things that are inevitable. I'm going to give an actual example there. Checked. Let's see after content check. You want to call a lifecycle event hook immediately after Angular checked. So if you want to manage the initialization task after Angular has fully initialized Angular, I am not sure if you do actually use these things. This is lifecycle hooks on regular. In 80 to 90% of the time, you just don't use this lifecycle hooks, or just apply some hacks. Most of the developers apply some hacks and background to do these things, like to initialize the content of the the components related content is being initialized. Then most of the developers don't use this lifecycle hooks. They just use ng on it, ng or do check. Any module share they use ng do check. You just update the entire reference of user. That's bad or that's good. I don't know. Yeah, we just update if there is a chain reduction strategy is on. First, I just update the reference. We just dump the user variable into the new object and then pass on the object to the child component. This is how most of the people do it, and I'm not sure if this is the right thing or not. But yeah, nobody used this. NG after unit something maybe something which a lot of developers used, have used, or they use in general. Like this is called after after Angular initialize use and child use and maybe no. Every additional initialization task is being done in this lifecycle. Since lifecycles are the lifecycle use of no other use, does they don't have any other use. Guess there is no example to it as such. But yes, have to check if again views and childs are being initialized completely, then we go and run this ng after view check. I guess this is wow, ng after view unit. There can be an example like I see like all the components are being initialized, the child view is being initialized, and then after every initialization of the view and the content also, we need to apply a particular class to a child, and on runtime maybe I don't know, like there is a like button, and we need to apply the like class dynamically or maybe using TypeScript, then that might be we might be using ng after unit or ng widget probably. Yeah, in John Destroy this is most common, mostly used for cleaning up and for task and will destroy the character component and all. So like mm, is being used for unsubscribing an observable, resetting a timer, maybe some or maybe resetting some variables, or maybe clearing the local storage. I don't know. Most of the cleaning tasks are done in John Destroy. Okay, let's move on to the next question now. Okay, lifecycle hook was very interesting and learned something new today. And let's see how much time we have left, how much time we have done. Okay, just oh, we have spent around 30 minutes. I didn't know. One with lifecycle hooks really. So there's like n number of questions there. And just to summarize the Angular's basics or everything might take a day, I guess. Okay, so just let's go on to something new. It's data binding in Angular. We'll just go on. What is data binding in Angular? So data binding is a core concept in Angular and allows to define communication between component and the DOM. Okay, it's mostly used for communication between component and the DOM. This is how we call it. Like it is very easy to define interactive applications without worrying about pushing and pulling data. Okay, not worrying about pushing and pulling data. Okay, maybe from the component DOM interpolation value adds the value of the property from the component name, user.name, user.address, property binding. Okay, so the interpolation is done using the curly braces, the double curly braces to add a property, adds the value of a particular property to the component, okay, from the component to the template. And then second is property binding. I guess this is like mostly called as one-way binding, we can say. Uh, there might be some property or value or something on an element, and we need to assign uh, a variable value from a component to that particular property, like maybe a class or maybe an attribute ID, or maybe also a value property in input. So this is where we use this property binding. This is mostly a one-way binding, so no other way of like changing the value changed here is being reflected in the component. Again, the value changed on the template is being reflected in the component. The value is passed from the component to the specified property or simplest method. Good. From the DOM to the component. Okay, this is event binding, and event binding is equal to function, some function at a specific DOM or event happens. Click change the app call the specified method in the component. Okay. So we have click, and then event binding is mostly done using round brackets, and then we call a function. Okay. Then the fourth one is two-way binding. This is mostly the most popular banana in the box, where we just use this syntax called banana in the box with a key using ng model. Then we assign a particular value to it, where whatever changes on the input is being changed in the object also, and whatever is being changed in the object is being registered in the input. For example, the code pillow snippet, put the ML DOM input and component property are in sync. I'm not saying that mostly I think like ng model also has an expanded version of it. Let's try to expanded version of banana in the box. Angular. Two-way binding alternative. Let's say alternative two-way binding. And this is going way too high. So I guess this is called ng on changes, and then there is also this called on change in the event functionality, which is called if you don't want the banana in the box. Let's try to do this. Without using ng model. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Custom two-way data binding in and two. There are three types of data binding: interpolation, event binding, and property binding. And property binding, there is one-way binding and there is two-way binding. Two-way binding is done using ng model. Directive with a banana in the box, and now we don't want to use ng model. So if there is no ng model and we don't want to do the two-way binding, then there is something like, then we need to divide it into property binding and event binding, something like that, like value name input. Okay, this is also one of the good example where the value name and on the input event, it's changing the target value, or it's changing the name to the target's value. Okay, but I guess there was one more thing to it, like ng on changes or ng model and ng on change. Okay, ng model change. This was ng model change, right? If you want to divide a banana in the box into two parts, then we need to separate the event and property bindings for ng model. So I'm gonna select this here. This we have a select HTML element, and currently we are having this ng model directive placed with like value being assigned for a selected item, and on an event of ng model change, we are calling a function called on changes, which internally is doing nothing but just assigning the selected item to a new value here. Okay. Okay, so we got to know that like ng model changes also. Okay, good. Now we will move to something. Next question. What is the difference between a constructor and Angular? This is one of my favorite questions. Okay. TypeScript classes have default method called constructor, which is normally used for initialization. And so is ngUnit. Then why we use ngUnit? Whereas ngUnit method is specific to Angular. Then what is something which is specific to Angular? Especially used to define Angular bindings, event given the constructor being called first. It is preferred to use ngUnit method of Angular bindings. This doesn't actually answer the question in a satisfactory way. Okay, so let's try to find out. Between constructor and ngUnit. Alright, so Stack Overflow is really good source to answer it. Most of the people are really good at this. Good. Constructor is default class which is equal when the class is instantiated and ensures proper initialization of the fields in the class and its subclasses. Okay. Angular are better dependency injection, analyze the constructor parameters, and when it creates a new instance by calling a new class, tries to provide providers that match the types of constructor parameters, resolves them and passes them to the constructor like new, my classes, and some argument. Okay. This is what the constructor is being used for. Good. Whereas ngUnit is a lifecycle of being called the Angular indicate the Angular is done creating a component. So okay, so something like which is there might be some properties or there might be some initialization that are necessary to be done while the creation of a component, or maybe we'll just say it as a class. Component is at the core is a class, so there might be some necessary arguments that are needed to create an instance of a class. That is where the constructor comes in place. Whereas ngUnit is lifecycle hook. It's called specifically when a component or a class is being completely created. So the class is being ready. Okay, so you can't initialize a service. You can initialize a service, but yes, you can't initialize a necessary service in ngUnit. But yes, this is where the constructor is an important part. Okay, we have to import ngUnit and like this in order to use it. Actually, implementing in on init is not mandatory, but considered a good practice. Okay, cool. Custom initialization logic after your directives data bound properties have been initialized on ngUnit init is called out, right? After the directives data bound properties have been checked for the first time and before any of its children have been checked, it is invoked only once the directive has been instantiated. Mostly we use ngUnit for all initialization declaration to and avoid stuff to work in the constructor. Okay, constructor should only use to initialize class members but shouldn't do actual work. Okay, so the variables or the service or I don't know the functionalities that are specific to the class but not specific to the Angular component should be or the members of the class uh, should be initialized in the constructor, and the other part, once the component is being created, the class is being object is being initialized, that should be done in engine in it. So what are those parts? So should you use constructor to set up dependencies? Not much else. Better place to start is where components bindings are solved. I guess this is more or less like an opinionated thing, because enjoyment is something which is called once. The running chain edition. The constructor on the component is called by the constructs component tree. All lifecycle hooks are called as part of running change detection. This is the right answer. The chain structure of a component is called when the Angular constructs component tree. So yeah, there might be 1, 3, 2, 3, like node 1, node 2, node 3, node 4, and Angular is trying to construct a tree out of it, like a tree of components. And this is where the constructor comes in, and it like needs I don't know, to build a component tree. All the parameters that are built into component tree has been done in constructor itself. And when there is a change detection happening, these life cycle hooks are being run. And then there is where enjoin initialization comes in place. Angular constructs component tree as a root model injector. It's called already configured, so you can inject any global dependencies. Also, when the Angular initializes the child component classes, the injector, the parent component is also already set up, so you can inject providers different on the parent component, including the parent component itself. The component constructor is only method that is being called in the context of the injector. So if you need any dependency, that only places to get these dependencies. So when Angular starts change detection, the component is being constructed already, and the constructors of all components in the tree have been called. Also, every component's template nodes have been added to the DOM. The input communication mechanism is processed during the run detection, and so you cannot expect to have properties available in the constructor. Okay, it will be available on after enjoyment. Let's see an example. So yeah, this is one of the right example, I think. Okay, so hmm, so let's forget about the constructor. We have talked too much about the constructor, and let's talk about enjoyment specifically. So there might be some child components where the input communication mechanism processed, okay, during change detection. So most of the time, we don't have the value being passed from the parent to the child, okay, during mm, creation of the component tree, but that is only being passed during the change detection cycle. So now the change detection cycle is being run, and the parent has set some variable, and that is being passed to a child component, and the child component is now receiving a variable from the input property of its component, and now there is where the chain reduction cycle of a component starts running, okay, and then it will be available, so only on after engine. So this is where enjoyment comes in place. So a child's enjoyment is being run after a parent's enjoyment or parents. And if you want to initialize something in the child now, suppose like I don't know, maybe the input property is XYZ, or maybe it's an object, and we need to initialize is loaded or something in child. So this is where the engine initialization comes in place. I guess, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. Yes. Is loaded is the right example. Let's see a quick example. My app child I property. So I'm going to start bootstrap evaluation. As I said, it first creates class for each component. So it's called my component constructor. It also creates a DOM node, which is the host element of the my app, right? Then it processes to creating a host element for the child component and call child component constructor, right? And this is not really concerned with the okay, input binding and link lifecycle hooks. So when this process is finished, Angular aims to upgrade the following tree of components. Okay, so it's now clear, finished with like creating a components, uh, a component tree. So now it has a view ready, like my app view, my component instance, and host element data, components instance. This is where the I is not in the view set, like again, it's still not in the picture now. Only when this runs, then runs the changes. So the component array is being built. Now it's running a change detection and updates bindings for my app. The bindings for my app are being updated, and this properties is being something which is updated right now. And calls engine on it on the my app component class. Then it processes updating the bindings for the child component and calls engine on the child component class. Okay. You can do initialization logic in either constructor or engine depending on what you need available. For example, I got how to get a complete conform track before view child query is evaluated. Shows what type of information logic can be required to be performed in the constructor. Okay, so I'm not going there, but yes, I got an idea. Some articles that help you understand the topic. This should be the accepted answer. Yes, this should be the accepted answer. This is the one answer that is actually true. It should be the right one. Okay, let's move on to the next question. What are Angular services? How much time are we done with? Let's see. The input property in the child component and then somewhat direct. Okay, so we'll go to our next question. Okay, let's move on to the next question. What are Angular services? Yes, what are Angular services? Angular services are singleton objects which get initiated only once during the lifetime of an application. Is it true? Can I initiate service again? I don't know. Maybe yes. I think Angular service is just the right of definition of it. I'm using Angular services just classes. But if it's talking specifically to Angular services, then it contains method that, oh yeah, it's like maybe I felt providing them in a provider of a root model, then yes, they become a singleton objects and are initiated only once during the lifetime of application. That's true. It contains method that maintain data throughout the life of an application that is does not get refreshed and is available all the time. The main objective of service is to organize and share business logic or data and functions with different components of an Angular application. With, uh, um, Organizations share business and data and data. Okay, stateless object and provides some very useful functions. These functions can be invoked from any component of Angular like controllers, directives, etc. What functions does it provide? I am not sure. Angular service provides any functions. This is what I provide. Angular service doesn't provide. This helps in dividing the small different logic and system. What is a stateless object? I don't want to understand what is a stateless object. Stateless object. A class without instance field instance variables. This class may have fields, but they are compile time constant, static, final, or very much later term is immutable. Is it so? How is it so possible that they don't have instance fields? They do have instance fields, like there can be a shared service and that can be immutable. Stateless object. I thought this language. Stateless or are Angular's two services supposed to be stateless? It's usually good at a component stateless and stores the state in a service. Okay, the component should not have instance variables and state should remain service. That's true. Especially the component added by a router so that navigating away from and later back to a router doesn't stop the data. Therefore, to your question, services are not supposed to be stateless. They are offered, but it's not required. You can use NGRX to store and state. So they are always stateful services. There is something which is wrong. It should be corrected. It is if you want a service and its state to be available during the whole application lifetime, you provide it an ng module. Needs some special handling for lazy loading models. Otherwise, you provide it at a component and lifetime and service will aim at an instance being destroyed. As in an article, it says exactly the services should be stateless publish events. I could see both points of view, but the service method should be a stateless method in my opinion. A link will be interesting to see an argument. What do you mean with service method? Okay. I think this is something that does a task as opposed to component which generally interacts directly with the user. And the architect are good. Yeah, this sounds like a good thing. Like service is supposed to do a task. It shouldn't be dependent on a component. Data. I think it's more or less an opinionated thing. I'm using ECMAScript 6 class notation, class grouping, native notation, class notation. I don't know any of this. Services should be stateless. So they are saying services which store temporary information in private or even public variables are hard to reason about and are typically a code smell. Okay, this is where a code centric touch website is saying. Various issues arise when using stateful services. What happens when services being used by two components on the same page? Group. Is the state correctly reset at some point? Is memory being leaked? Is the page bookmarkable? Are the browser controls that are forward and backward buttons behaving the way they are supposed to? How can the service be unit tested? I prefer to think the service is a singleton object that may be used concurrently and come come and go at any time. If you get into the mindset, you will shy away from the stateful service as much as possible. Do not link information about data sources. Principle of separation comes under tier to me. As such, a hit to see Angular services expose the fact that HTTP requests are used to retrieve information. You might also call this a leaky abstraction. Example, suppose we have a kit of flowers that can be used for retrieving event streams, what has happened in repositories, organization, and so on, etc. Okay, this information may be retrieved via get event for organization string and organization name. That's okay. Now, what should the return type of that method be? From a service consumer point of view, we are only interested in list event, but due to the asynchronous nature of JavaScript, service consumers also need to be content with eventful results. Eventful results typically means promises in an Angular ecosystem. Live. Okay, let's get back to what we're looking into. Eventually, results typically means promises by Angular ecosystem boiled down to promise statements. Now, typically, I guess he is explaining his point mostly with respect to why service shouldn't be stateful. Okay, so let's try to understand what his point is. There's a GitHub event service and there is a method where we get a list of events for particular organizations. And now what should be the type of that method is? Consumer point of view that will be interested in a list event, but due to asynchronous nature of JavaScript, service can also need to be content with eventful results. Okay, so it turns out into a promise. Okay, now this type is absolutely okay. We cannot hide asynchronous information retrieval. Okay. Unfortunately, as mentioned above, some Angular services are not implemented with the separation of concerns in mind. This service typically return a type like promise, HTTP response, and list event. Yeah, this is what I've seen in most of the services, in most of the code bases. Service consumers are not interested in the fact that HTTP requests are used under the hood. Okay, they only want the result. The following service implementation is hiding network communication via promising for transformation with the following signature. Hide network communication. So what he has done right now, again, he has called the, okay, it's called a get URL is in a get method, and then what he has done is hide network communication. So what is this hide network communication do? Okay, it just converts the response into response.data. Yeah, this is what was old in the old Angular. I guess it mostly was in ASP. I thought it was. I thought so. It was old Angular article. Earlier, Angular used to just send a HTTP response, and then we needed to retrieve the data from response.data. Um, Nowadays, it just sends JSON object directly. So I guess that's no longer a concern right now. Again, handling errors in the service. What he is trying to say is high network communication response. If he's doing everything else, he should have owned a single responsibility. Multiple service. Okay, there's just an old argument, and regarding stateful and stateless nature of a service, there is nothing as such solid or solid proof regarding it. That the service shouldn't be stateful and it should only stateless. I'm assuming for shared data or something, we generally use stateful services. The stateless nature is something which is opinionated, but we'll go with it right now. This function, I will say the Angular service is object and provides some various functions. I won't say this is stateless. These functions can be invoked from any component of Angular like controllers, directory, etc. This helps in providing web application to small different logical units which can be reused. Yeah, good. I know. But what does an Angular service provide? Injectable. Say an injectable definition. What does injectable under the hood provide? Does it provide something else other than providing root? Injectable in Angular. Dependency injection. Okay. Now we are going a bit deep into dependency injection of an Angular. Sorry for my voice. I'm not using any voice modulation. I'm directly using my voice, which is very. I'm not. Very raw. Dependencies are services, etc. I want this injectable. Decorator attachments a class as available to provided and injected as a dependency. Good. So yeah, it has only one option provided, so it doesn't provide any other options to us like type, root, platform, in, null. Oh, okay. So providing provides has a type of any. It can be a root associated with injectable events model or any other injector type. Null equivalent to undefined. The injectable is not provided in the scope automatically and must be added to the provider's array. Okay, so if it's provided in null, then it's user's responsibility or it's the developer's responsibility to provide a particular service in any Angular module or a component or a directive so as to use it, make it as a singleton object or yeah, in order to use it or in order to use it as a dependency injection. The following options specify that the injectable should be provided in one of the following injectors. Root, the application level injected in most apps. Return a special single platform injector shared by all applications on the page. What is this platform? In each lazy loaded module, while all eagerly loaded modules share one instance. Now this is good. So we got to know something new about it. So providing comes with three options. I would select four options. Root, which is being provided in root. Platform, special singleton injector is being created, so which is shared by all application on the page. There might be the application might be an umbrella application which has I don't know, list of applications under it, like list of number of Angular applications specifically under it. There's this service that might be needed to be shared across the platform. Okay, this is across the applications inside one umbrella application. It might be a case, or and then there's also what called any there. This is quite new to me, where a unique instance is each loaded in each lazy loaded module. Okay, while all eagerly loaded model that are like the ones which are mentioned in Angular root module or the declaration in the declaration like components that are declared in Angular root module. There is any type of a unique instance is being provided. We all share that one. This is a really tricky one. Two, I'm not sure if they actually should have this one in place. It can create a lot of issues in long run that I can see. Nonetheless, let's move on to something remove injector dot create providers similar dependency user process. Injector dot create is service. Yes, dependency is this. Oh man, seriously. Angular code gets complicated day by day. So okay. I guess that's enough for today. I'm off for a dinner right now, guys, and let's end the stream yet. We are already past 1 hour, I think, and let's continue the stream. Maybe in a short while or maybe tomorrow. Till then, bye bye, Shabba Khair. Yeah, sayonara. Thank you so much.